Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Abigail Gonzalez, and I am one of the dietitians here at RPM Logix. Today we have with us Erika, who is another one of our dietitians, and she will be the one doing this awesome presentation that we have for you today. And I just want to remind you that RPM Logix is partnered with your doctors, and we are here to provide services for improving your health. Our mission is to educate, to coach, and to motivate everyone to live healthier lives. You are all members of our programs, and that gives you access to different services like our registered dietitians, diabetes educators, then also to different monitors like blood pressure monitors and scales. So let us know how we can help you and support you. All of you are getting, well, if you're part of our mailing list, you're getting the newsletters, and then you're also getting the invite for these events. And there in those emails, we have our contact information. So if you haven't connected with one of our dietitians or nurses, you can always send us an email or give us a call so we can connect with one of those services. And yeah, so this presentation is going to be for about 30 minutes. And we are going to also have questions at the end. So if anyone has any questions, you can always just click on the box at the bottom. It says Q&A. You can click there and then type your question. And then at the end, I will read those questions for Erika, and then Erika will help answer those questions. And well, so a little bit about Erika. Erika, like I said, is one of our dietitians here at RPM Logix. She has been a dietitian for over 5 years. And she's also a diabetes educator and health specialist. She got her nutrition and bachelor's and master's from the University of Pittsburgh. And she also loves working with patients. She loves to see how the small changes that people make help to bring up great results and big results, and more than anything, improve their health. And also when she's not working, she's enjoying time with her family. She loves to be outside with her kids, and then also in the kitchen. She loves to try new recipes and cook with them. She has 2 kids, and yeah, so today we are going to learn and hear a lot about how to eat healthy on a budget. So let's hear what Erika has to say today.
Thank you, Abigail. I'm excited to be here tonight. I think we can turn this somewhat stressful topic into a fun one and hopefully share lots of good tips and tricks to eat well on a budget. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we will review what food insecurity is and how it affects Americans. Of course, we're going to review basic strategies to eat well on a budget and provide real life tips that will hopefully be applicable for your budget. And as we go, we'll look at several examples of these different things. Like Abigail mentioned, if you have questions or comments as we go, please insert those into that Q&A function for us to review together at the end. Okay, so food insecurity is kind of a self-explanatory term, but the USDA defines food insecurity as a lack of consistent access to enough food for every person in a household to live an active, healthy life. So not just to make ends meet or, to fill us up from, a couple times a day, but to live an active, healthy life. And according to feedingamerica.org, 34 million Americans are considered food insecure, which is about 10% of our population. So pretty substantial effect. We can see on the map there, the darker color is where we see more food insecurity. So we're seeing it maybe more in the South, but really it's everywhere. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, is a great benefit to take advantage of if you qualify. But I know many households have seen recent reductions in how much they receive since the end of the pandemic in May. Wherever you get your grocery dollars from and however many grocery dollars you have, today we'll be reviewing strategies for kind of stretching those dollars. Okay, so it really comes down to these 4 strategies for affording adequate, healthy food for our families: planning ahead, shopping smart, reducing our waste, and loving our leftovers. So first, we'll talk about planning ahead. If you had the opportunity to join us last month for our webinar, Tori, one of our other dietitians, talked about meal planning. Of course, meal planning helps keep us on track for achieving our health goals, but it is also important for keeping our budget on track. It's helpful to plan those meals around foods that you may already have. So obviously, therefore, saving some money. So a good first step is to take inventory of your pantry, fridge, freezer, deep freezer, wherever you have food in your home to see what you have that needs used up. This can help reduce waste as well, which is one of the other strategies that we'll talk about in a few minutes. We also want to check those sale flyers and see what coupons we could use in the upcoming week. Based on our inventory of what we already have, as well as upcoming sales, next week create a meal plan and then a grocery list to create those planned meals. If you're anything like me, having a meal calendar hanging on your fridge or an aesthetically pleasing tear-off notebook with spaces for planning meals and creating a shopping list is very helpful and motivates you to stay on track. You can find a lot of helpful meal planning templates and tools on, somewhere as simple as Amazon, but I know also Tori at last month's webinar had shared a few templates with us, and those would be available if that's something that you feel like would be helpful. You can let your nurse or your dietitian know, and they can certainly get those to you. I want you to remember that meal prep does not have to be all or nothing. It is a full spectrum, and some weeks you might plan every meal, cook it ahead of time, pack it in tiny little containers stacked neatly in your fridge, and other weeks you will be lucky to get a semblance of a grocery list pulled together, and that's okay. So on the top left corner here, we see some cut up watermelon. That's still prepping in some way, shape, or form, right? It's making that healthy snack readily available and convenient so that we're just as likely to reach for that as we might be to reach for something processed and easy and ready for us. So that's still prepping. On the other end of the spectrum, we might see those containers packed. The top right or bottom right corners show us maybe some lunches that are packed and ready for the week, or some breakfasts even. And maybe sometimes you do just dinners, maybe you prep just breakfast. If you're really hitting a home run, maybe you prep all your meals. So it is a full spectrum, and whatever helps you is what matters the most. So meal prep to whatever extent is feasible and helpful. So cooking at home more than eating out, and then having staples on hand for those unplanned times so that takeout is a little bit less tempting. I think we all can agree that it is typically more expensive to get takeout or eat at a restaurant. Your meal plan will ideally include most meals being prepared at home. Knowing full well that life is full of surprises, it's a good idea to plan for the unexpected. Have some staples on hand for quick, healthy meals your family enjoys so that the temptation to grab fast food on the busiest evenings is not as strong. These might include things like spices, oils, vinegars, but also some maybe canned goods like beans or canned fish, tomato products, maybe lentils or dried whole grains. Fruits and vegetables, probably frozen, maybe canned so that they last a little bit longer. Frozen meats that you purchased when they were on sale. So maybe you bought chicken in bulk when it was on sale and now you have it frozen. So kind of planning ahead with some of these staple ingredients just for those really chaotic nights. You can also plan to have leftovers in the freezer for those type of evenings. So make extra, or don't plan to make extra, but when it inevitably happens, pack it up in a container to serve 2 or 3, or maybe just you, whoever would eat it, and throw it in the freezer. And we'll talk more about that later in this discussion, but having kind of a plan for the busy weeknight where that meal plan just kind of falls through. Meatless meals can be less expensive. If you've heard of Meatless Monday, then you know it's a nationwide push to encourage more plant-based meals to reduce your carbon footprint and to improve your overall health. I think initially when we think meatless, we think vegan, some fancy dish that I couldn't pronounce with ingredients I've never heard of, but that is certainly not always the case. Many of the meatless recipes I've used in the past cost less than $2 per serving. You just want to make sure you include some protein, some nice lean protein. So maybe it's beans, tofu, edamame, a low-fat dairy. You want that well-rounded plate, but it can still be meatless, and that can be done at a pretty low cost. And our last tip for plan ahead is drink more water. Is this too simple? So stop overpaying for your beverage and start drinking what is best to hydrate you at a much lower cost. A 16.9 fluid ounce bottle of water costs about 18 cents. So when I looked at a 32 bottle case and did some math there, each bottle was 18 cents. That same size bottle of Mountain Dew costs almost 48 cents. That makes water almost a third of the price of soda, which can equate to some pretty huge savings over time. Besides, water is a much healthier choice, and it doesn't come with the cost of all those extra calories that come with soda. So another way to save money is to drink more water. And sometimes, depending on where you live, maybe the tap water is drinkable. Maybe it's not. Maybe you have a filter. Maybe you do have to buy bottled water, but certainly 9 times out of 10, water is going to be the cheaper option. Next up is shopping smart. First, and perhaps most obvious, look for store brand or generic items to save money. There are certainly many items that taste just as good in an off-brand format, but for a way lower cost. To demonstrate the huge savings that generic products offer, let's look at this taco night cost sheet. So this was very eye-opening to me. These prices I pulled from Walmart.com just earlier this month to show you how much you would have to buy of each ingredient to be able to prepare your taco night. So for example, you see like the pricing for an entire can of black beans, though you may not use the whole can, you still had to buy the whole can. So I tried to do it that way. So these are all the things you would need to buy to have taco night. And I give you the cost for the generic item and the cost for the brand name item. Now it's obvious that each generic item is more inexpensive than its brand name counterpart, but usually not by that much. So when we look at like the black beans, 78 cents a can for the generic and $1.28 for a can of I think it was Bush's black beans. So either way, not really an arm and a leg for a can of black beans. And I know I'm guilty of just thinking, okay, it's $1.28. I will honestly pay that for a can of beans and be okay. But when you add it all up, when you look at the difference in the cost of the lettuce, the cheese, the tortillas, when you look at all of those different costs and you add up to find the difference, you see a savings of $6.30 for just this one meal. So imagine if we did this for 3 meals a day for an entire week. There is a potential to see savings of over $100 a week just by choosing store brand names instead of, store brand items instead of brand names. So certainly worth being intentional and choosing those generic items. The savings could certainly add up. Next, and we've all heard this one before, don't shop right before mealtime when you're most hungry. Some studies have shown that people spend an average of 60% more when they're shopping on an empty stomach. So that's the difference between spending $150 or $240. That's a big difference. So if you're me, or I know, a lot of us might not love grocery shopping. So we might go Saturday morning, first thing, maybe before we've even eaten breakfast, because we think that's when it won't be crowded. And we're probably right, but also we might be starving. So again, that's the difference between spending $150 versus $240. So grab breakfast before you run to the store so you're less inclined to reach for those unnecessary items. Buy frozen fruits and vegetables. Frozen fruits and vegetables tend to get a bad reputation, oftentimes seen as maybe less nutritious than fresh produce. Good news, the nutrition is nearly identical. And in fact, I've even read some research that shows frozen to be slightly better in some cases because it's been flash frozen as soon as it's harvested. And this process maintains the nutrition a little bit better than that fresh produce that is harvested and then packed into a truck and hauled to the grocery store. And all that time, sometimes we can see degradation of some of the nutrients. It's pretty minimal, but either way, the point is frozen is just as good, if not maybe a little bit better. You do have to be careful not to choose frozen vegetables that are covered in cheese sauce or seasoned heavily with salt, but otherwise, they're certainly a great way to save money on produce. And you also hopefully wouldn't find yourself throwing it away before you're able to use it before it goes bad because it does have that longer shelf life. Shop for fresh produce that is in season or on sale. The USDA has this great listing of what produce is in season at what time of the year. By shopping for seasonally available produce, you'll not only save money, but you'll also likely get produce when it is at its tastiest. So you'll kind of get the peak flavor out of those items if you're choosing them when they're in season. You can also check for sales on certain produce items in weekly flyers, or some stores will have discounted fruits or vegetables that are, quote unquote, ugly or approaching overripe. Depending on how you intend to use your produce, these could be great options that, save you some money and still provide what you were looking for. I do want to take a minute to mention here, if canned fruits and vegetables are what fits in your budget best, that's also fine. You're still getting that benefit of fruits and vegetables. Things to look for, when we talk about fruit, look for fruit that's been packed in water or 100% juice, and look for vegetables that indicate some kind of reduction in the sodium content, low sodium, reduced sodium. You want to pay attention to that label. Canned vegetables can be rinsed to help reduce sodium content by about 40%. And that's really helpful if you have something like kidney disease, congestive heart failure, high blood pressure, something that makes you watch your sodium intake a little bit more closely. Get more nutrition rather for your money. So beans, canned tuna, eggs, oats, brown rice. These items are usually fairly inexpensive, but they pack a nutrition punch. So beans loaded with fiber, protein, iron, B vitamins. You do want to be careful with the sugar content in something like canned baked beans, but otherwise canned beans can be rinsed just like other canned vegetables to help cut the sodium content, and they're a great option. Canned tuna or those envelopes of tuna, another great source of protein, but also omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin B12, vitamin D. In fact, it's one of the few foods in our diet that contains any appreciable amount of vitamin D. You can overdo it on the tuna, so be careful just because of mercury content. 1 can a week, 1 to 2 of those envelopes a week. One or the other, of course, not both, but certainly a great, inexpensive way to get some real good nutrition. Eggs are usually a very cheap, complete protein that's also loaded with B vitamins and a little bit more of that vitamin D. I know we had seen, because of issues with the chickens, we had seen some rising costs of eggs, but I think they've pretty much returned to normal at this point, and that's a good go-to. And then oats and brown rice are both whole grains that provide fiber, help stabilize blood sugars, lower cholesterol, and support weight loss efforts. So these are just those nutrition powerhouse foods that really don't cost that much. When you are comparing products at the grocery store, take a peek at that unit cost or unit pricing. So here's what I mean. Here's an example. We see the yogurt that's sold in the larger tub, 32-ounce tub, and then the 6-ounce, like single serve cup of yogurt. Of course, we would expect that the top yogurt is going to be more expensive. It's a larger volume. So maybe we quickly look at that and think, yeah, that's probably comparable. But when we look at the unit price, it's very clear that it's significantly cheaper to buy that larger quantity. So it's 5 cents per ounce in the 32-ounce tub versus 12 cents per ounce in the 6-ounce tub. This is often the case. You do need to be careful with your portions when you buy that bigger tub of yogurt. Now you're in charge of how much you eat when you get home, but it's certainly the most economic way to buy most things. So look at that unit pricing. Compare and choose less expensive cuts of meat sometimes. So this can be tricky. Take your time when you're shopping for meats. Most often, we encourage you to choose cuts that are going to be nice and lean. And when we're talking about red meat, that often means something with the name loin or round. Those indicate they're going to be pretty lean cuts of meat. But sometimes it's okay to look for the less expensive cuts or the ones that are on sale, and then just take time to carefully trim those meats at the time of preparation once you get them home. Speaking of meat, excuse me, we can find alternative protein that's much less expensive, such as canned fish, chicken, beans. These options come with increased sodium levels. So again, here we are talking about those canned products, not the bad guys, but check your labels. And if it's something you can rinse, that often helps a little bit. So compare labels, look for something with the lowest sodium content, and consider sprinkling those proteins throughout your week when you're making your meal plan. This one is one of my personal favorites. Try those grocery pickup programs. There are stores that do free pickup. I want to say there's stores out there that would do free grocery delivery even. Where I live, Walmart does free grocery pickup. And without it, I think we would be darn near broke. I went to the store earlier this week for just 2 items. I had 2 items. I didn't even make a list. It was just 2 items. And I came out spending over $90. So if you have planned, like we talked about earlier, and you have your grocery list, it's very simple to place that pickup order and stick to your list. But when we walk through the aisles, looking for everything on our list, we often find other fun things to toss into the cart. This isn't always a bad thing, but as far as our wallets are concerned, it usually isn't a good thing. So take advantage of grocery pickups if you have those where you live. Okay. Now we're going to talk about reducing waste and loving your leftovers. I've kind of lumped the two together. They go hand in hand. Shockingly, almost 40% of all food in America is wasted. The average American throws away over 200 pounds of edible food each year. And if the US wasted just 5% less food, it would be enough to feed 4 million Americans. So the impact of food waste, that's hard on the environment. It's hard on the problem of hunger across the nation, across the world, but it's also hard on our wallet. So being really mindful of what we're buying and how we're going to use it so that we can cut back on what ends up getting thrown away at the end of the week is important for a number of reasons. Regarding produce, it's important to store it correctly to maximize its shelf life. And sometimes that seems like common sense, but there is some science behind it. Excuse me. Okay. Sorry. It's important to consider 3 things when storing fresh produce. If this feels overwhelming, this chart will be available, and it really is a nice summary of all these different factors we're about to talk about. So the first thing to consider is temperature. Of course, some fruits and vegetables last longer in the refrigerator, while others lose quality when they're kept too cold. For example, tomatoes get that mealy texture when they're refrigerated. The next thing to consider is airflow, and in this chart, they call it container. But basically, sometimes we can think of different produce that does best in a sealed container to help lock out moisture. Other times it seems like when we keep certain produce in that sealed container or sealed bag, it traps the moisture and causes early spoiling. So that's something to consider. And the last thing is ethylene gas. Ethylene gas is neither good or bad. It's just something that's produced by some of our fruits and vegetables. And what it does is ripen some of our other fruits and vegetables. So there's kind of two categories. There's produce that makes ethylene gas. Here they're called producers. And there's produce that is sensitive to ethylene gas. So if you have, for example, an avocado that is hard and you want it to be ready to eat tomorrow, what you could do is put that avocado in a brown paper bag with a banana or two. And the banana is a producer of ethylene gas, and the avocado is sensitive to ethylene gas. So the two of them together would help that avocado ripen a little bit quicker. It just so happens that the avocado would also help the banana to ripen. But the point of this is this table shows you what to avoid storing together. So that apples, that first food item, it says avoid cabbage, leafy greens, carrots. So they give you a little bit of guidance on what to store separately so that you don't have that over ripening or that quicker ripening to make that shelf life a little bit longer. The next tip is to put leftover vegetables on homemade pizza. So Sunday night at my house is pizza night, and most of the time we make them at home. It's a fun activity for the kids, and it's a great way to use up leftovers. If there's leftover chicken, we might make a barbecue chicken pizza. If there's pineapple that needs eaten and we have leftover Canadian bacon from breakfast, we're making a Hawaiian pizza. So get creative and use your leftover vegetables on a homemade pizza. Our next tip is to pack leftovers for lunches later in the week. So whether those leftovers are intentionally made or not, they make great lunches. Pack them up in small portions so that you have those for later in the week, or put them in the freezer for a quick already packed lunch in the future. They'll stay good in the freezer for probably up to 3 months, sometimes a little bit longer in a deep freezer. Plan for one of your nights to be leftover night once a week, maybe Thursday or Friday. It's an easy, thoughtless, consistent night of leftovers to help clean out the refrigerator. And it's that one night that you don't have to plan anything. You heat up whatever you find in the fridge that needs eaten, and it helps to reduce your waste. It helps you love your leftovers, and it's just an easy part of the meal plan. Repurpose your leftovers. So if you have leftover chicken and rice from Monday night, you can combine that with some peppers and onions, open up a can of beans and throw it in a tortilla for quesadilla night. Or maybe you have leftover salmon and you have lettuce left over from taco night. Okay, now we're having salmon salads with all the veggies that need eaten. Maybe there's peppers or onions, cherry tomatoes. Now you have a great colorful salad. Nick Evans wrote a book called Love Your Leftovers, and this is a really fun cookbook that kind of has that unique spin because the focus is, of course, using up leftovers to make some new things. So not just reheating them, but kind of turning them into something new. There's also websites like the one called supercook.com. And on supercook.com, you can tell this search engine what kind of food you have in your fridge. And it will say, okay, here's some recipes you can make, but also it will say, if you also have these staples in your pantry, you could make this. Well, yeah, of course, I have some flour, or I have a salad dressing, or I have some sour cream, whatever it might be. And here's some other recipes if you have those staple items. So supercook.com can be very helpful to repurpose your leftovers. Okay, so we have reviewed several strategies to help you eat a healthy diet on a budget. But perhaps the very first step is to set your budget. So, without knowing your financial situation, I obviously cannot give you a specific dollar amount that should be spent on groceries each week or each month. But the USDA does put out a monthly food plan for 4 different financial levels. There's thrifty, low cost, moderate cost, and liberal. And these help give you a starting point for how much you, quote unquote, should spend on groceries. It's also important to collect your own data. So I think it's a great idea to keep track for a month or two and see how much you spend in total on groceries each week. And then if money is tight, try to consider some of the things we've talked about. Are there ways that you could cut back? Maybe you set your budget a little lower than what you're currently spending and employ some of the techniques we just talked about and see if you can stick to that new budget to open up some dollars for something else. It does take discipline, but it certainly can be done. This is an example from August's thrifty food plan created by the USDA. So you can see they give an estimated cost for different ages per week and per month. So you can tally up a total for your family. And then this same table exists for the 3 other financial tiers. So if you feel like maybe you fit better into that low cost category or moderate cost, those are also available. And I think this might be a helpful reference for you if you're trying to figure out what that budget should even be. They give an example, that reference family at the bottom. Maybe, mom and dad are between the ages of 2 and 50, and then there's 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. So it shows you your weekly grocery cost of about $225 on the thrifty food plan. And this is using prices that we're seeing in August for groceries across the nation. So this might be a good reference for you as well. But I also know this 50-30-20 rule is pretty popular and easy for budgeting. If you're familiar with this rule, it designates 50% of your net income for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings or debt. Of course, groceries fall into the needs category, but so do utilities, housing, car payments, those types of things. So those things all have to come out of the 50% of your net income if you subscribe to this rule. But this is like a nice, easy, roundabout way, and maybe this is helpful for starting. However much you decide to spend on groceries each month, remember the 4 strategies to help stretch the dollars you designate for groceries. So plan ahead, shop smart, reduce waste, and love your leftovers. And remember, the first wealth really is your own health. So invest wisely. And now I think we will take some time to answer questions if anybody has any. And if you have any now that you haven't already submitted, you can put those in the Q&A box.
Yeah, so please, everyone, if you can just type in your questions. We have one so far, so let's see if anyone else has time to type their question. But the one that we have right now says, let me just read it for you. How can I make sure that my budget-friendly meals are satisfying and enjoyable to eat?
So I think if you're working with one of our dietitians, you still want to employ the tactics that you're learning there. So you still want to look for that balance. Your fruits and vegetables are still an important part of that meal. They might be canned or frozen, and that's okay. Your protein, we talked about some proteins that we can sprinkle through the week. It doesn't always have to be meat, but we can definitely get protein from things like the beans or the canned tuna or salmon. So sprinkling those things in, you're still filling that quarter of your plate with protein, but it's not, the filet mignon. And then, we talked about how some of those grains are pretty inexpensive. So we can do rice or oats pretty inexpensively. Look for those whole grain varieties. You're still looking to check all those same boxes. And you still can do those things like season your food with the things that you enjoy. So maybe you're not buying fresh garlic, you're buying, the refrigerated, um, already minced garlic, or maybe you're using garlic powder. That's fine. Whatever you like, you still want to try and make that food as enjoyable as you can. And certainly that can be done very well on a budget.
Okay, yeah, and we have one more that says, for how can I make sure to eat healthy when not able or not having enough time to cook at home? Is it possible to eat healthy when eating out?
Absolutely. So you can eat out. I mean, the two obstacles when you eat out will be budget and also eating well. So very quickly, I mean, eating out could be its own webinar, certainly, but um, as far as eating healthy when you eat out, ask for sauces and gravies and dressings on the side so that you're in charge of how much you're using, because those tend to be pretty calorically dense. Maybe ask for no salt. Please don't salt my food. I'm trying to watch my salt intake. Sometimes it's best, those portions are going to be big. So ask for that to go box when you first sit down so that you can pack up half of it before you start eating. Out of sight, out of mind. You're not tempted to overeat. That also helps with budget. Now you're getting a second meal out of it. Of course, from home is much less expensive 9 times out of 10. But I mean, you can certainly try to be as you're looking for coupons, or you're signing up for, if there's like a rewards program at the restaurants that you like, sign up for those so that at least when you're ordering from there, you're earning some kind of point system typically that you can redeem later and save some money that way. But you can eat out well. And that, again, is a huge topic that you want to work with your dietitian to try to achieve. And you have to be very, very careful, but you can do it on a tight budget a handful of times a week, but you still want to try as much as you can to eat at home.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Erika. Just some tips, like if you don't have time to cook, there's also some easy and convenient meal foods that you can buy at the grocery store. Like, for example, frozen items like frozen veggies that you can just heat up in the microwave alongside your meals. A rotisserie chicken, just remove the skin and then shred the meat, and you can use that for soups or salads, or just with those frozen veggies, and it doesn't take more than 2 minutes to put together. Like, grab the frozen veggies, the chicken, and put it in the microwave. Also like tuna, sardines, those type of things can be very helpful. And then cooking in bulk, like for example, you can boil 10 eggs together, peel them on over the weekend, and then throughout the week you can be eating those. Same with like, or making something that you can make ahead of time, like for example, oats or chia pudding that you can like make 5 portions for the week, and then they're ready. And at least maybe you cannot plan every single and prep every single meal, but if you prep or plan 5 meals, breakfast, dinner, then you will be saving time along the way. And then also keeping healthy snacks available that don't require any cooking, like for example, baby carrots, celery, Greek yogurt, just a piece of fruit. Like those things don't require any cooking, and they're very healthy. Nuts as well. For those things, is just being mindful of the calories as well, like in the portion, like especially for the nuts and the nut butters, like peanut butter. Just being mindful of the portion and combining with something that is high in volume and not as many calories, like the fruits and the veggies, the carrots, the celery, the cucumber, all of those things. So, and I think there's one more question. What is the best way to save time on prepping, like chopping, dicing, etc.?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. I mean, if you're someone who's very, very comfortable in the kitchen and you're still finding that to be very time consuming, you're just doing a lot of chopping and dicing. I mean, there's tools out there. There's like vegetable choppers that kind of help a little bit. I think more than anything, it's setting aside time to do that kind of prep, and that can be on that spectrum of meal prep. So as soon as I bring my produce home, sometimes it's best for me to wash the celery and cut it into the small strips that I want to pack for a lunch so that it's already ready. So that tomorrow, when I'm trying to get out the door and pack a lunch for me or my kids, at least that's already ready and I can grab it. So it's kind of finding where you have that time to do it all at once. I find that to be the most helpful. They do sell a lot of produce that's already cut up, whether it's fruit or vegetables, and oftentimes it'll be kind of geared like these are all veggies you might grill with, and they already have them cut up and maybe on a kebab. Or these are saute, or these are like an Asian medley to throw in some kind of a stir fry. You do pay a little bit of a premium for something that's already cut up like that. So if budget is a concern, then I think you have to just make the time whenever you have the time. If you're not someone who's super duper comfortable in the kitchen, the more you use that knife and develop your knife skills, the faster that kind of thing will go. So it is just something that comes over time. But I don't really have any other good tips. Do you, Abigail?
No, I think it's about the same, like just kind of like finding the time, like for example, when you have something baking in the oven and like, well, I'm prepping and baking something in the oven, at that time you can be chopping your veggies, even if you're not going to use them in that meal. Then also, well, another one is just if you have like don't have a lot of time, also like not relying on perfection, maybe instead of chopping the carrot into, I don't know, 20 pieces, you do 5. And it's okay to have larger pieces if you're okay with the texture and the amount. Just like, well, or the onion. I know people who mince the onion or cut it very, very small. Like sometimes it's not necessary, and you can have larger chunks if that saves times and reduces the stress. And that's, yeah, or like Erika was saying, like going for those tools that they sell, like these little choppers that they have that you just put like the onion or the cucumber and you just like, it's like has like little grits. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. And finding the time, like she's saying, or if the option is not as expensive to buy it already pre-cut, then, and if you're really bothered with that, just buying that other option. And well, that's all we have for the questions. So thank you everyone for joining and for coming to the webinar. We are going to have the recording available probably tomorrow. So if you would like to review it or see it again, or if you are interested in any of the things that were mentioned here, like for example, the seasonal produce or the budget sheets or whatever, you can ask your nurse or your dietitian, and then we will be happy to send you the link with the recording and then also those resources. We're going to put it up tomorrow, and you can always rewatch it or just have it there in your kind of like a library for you to watch later. But thank you everyone for coming. We will have another webinar next month. You will be receiving the invites. But if you feel like, well, it's been a while and there's no invite, you can always ask your nurse or your dietitian to send you the registration link, and we will be happy to do that. Again, thanks everyone. And if anything comes to your mind after tonight, you can always, like if you have a question, you can send it our way. Like I said, there's the email address on the invites that you get for the webinar. You can always click there and send us an email with any questions that you may have, and we will be happy to answer them. Thanks, Erika. It was a very informative presentation. I even like learned a couple of things here that I'm going to jot down and be able to tell my patients, and then also to contribute when we're kind of like discussing all of these things on how to stay healthy on a budget. And again, just remember, it's not about perfection, but progress. We know things are very expensive now, but it's also, again, trying to, well, those little tips that we mentioned here, like the generic brands, trying to cook in larger batches. And then also when you're eating out, kind of like pre-portioning your what you're going to have for leftovers, just that you can make more meals out of one. Okay, well, so thanks everyone again. And we hope to see you here at the next one. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.